Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. And for our neighbors in the south, or my neighbors to the south, happy Thanksgiving to every one of my viewers and subscribers. I wish you a happy day, an enjoyable day, and may each and every one of you find the blessings of your life. So, as for everybody else, happy Thursday. It is November 28th. And I thought today, sort of in honor of Thanksgiving, that maybe what we would do is we would take a look at sort of why Trump, what the lessons are, how this turns out, just what the heck, like why. So I haven't done one of those before for you guys, so I thought it might be interesting to just take a look and see if the universe can give us some insight and guidance in terms of some of the energies that surround what is going on in the States and what we can expect going forward. So come on down. I have a question. Okay, so we're going to just do another couple quick shuffles here. So let's look at it this way. How about this? Spirit, can you please tell us the energies and the purpose behind the current situation in the United States? Energy, Purpose, USA. Energy, Purpose, USA. Okay. So to start with, this is sort of we're setting the table here, if you will. So the United States, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we're new countries. And there is still an evolution that every one of us are sort of moving through. And so part of what is going on is honestly, it's just growing pains, right? It's part of the forward momentum and motion of your country. When you have a country that is sort of established and created to follow the rule of law, that becomes, the governing practice, right? That becomes what has created you. But you also have a country that is very, very driven and motivated by money, commerce, the expansion and the strength of corporations, of businesses. And at one point in time, it was about, corporations were created and then they employed people and the wealth was sort of, shared or at least distributed more evenly. And so that was how, the middle classes sort of evolved and that security, was put in place for the people. Well, what has happened, over time is that the corporations have sort of gotten a wee little bit out of hand. And so that has created a bit of this, wealth disparity, if you will, within your country. And make no mistake, every country has it, okay? There are rich people, there are poor people, and there are, the middle class struggling to find what direction they're moving. The lower class is struggling to get to the middle class. Every single country deals with this dilemma. But in the United States, because so much of it is driven by that dollar, that is your frame of reference, frankly, unfortunately. Because what has happened is, things that, in my humble opinion, should not be corporate, should not be commercialized, made into a business profit and loss plan, are things like your healthcare, things like education, prescription drugs, those kinds of things. When you are operating a business and it is for profit, you have to realize that as the consumer, you are just a number, okay? Sort of like this. Does McDonald's really care? And I don't attack me, I'm just using McDonald's sort of as a generic, okay? Does McDonald's care if you have a Big Mac or a cheeseburger? Does it care if you get fat or that, you know, the salt makes your blood pressure go up? It does not. It is about moving a product. And unfortunately, in your country, that was sort of the evolution of these systems. Until what has happened is you have found yourself in a place where literally an unexpected illness can bankrupt you. You can perhaps survive, you know, maybe the surgery or the initial onslaught of the illness, but in order to have the medicines to keep you, you know, moving towards health or staying in a healthy place, well, that also is coming from a straight business perspective. So there were no caps. There were sort of no real guardrails, if you will. I mean, from what I understand, you have that sort of Medicare thing that kicks in at a certain age. And I understand that also kicks in, you know, where there is a need and an inability sort of to perhaps cover the cost of that need. But by and large, the whole thing is set up to be very, very, very transactional. And so, is it really surprising that along the evolution, as the country started to grapple, make decisions about maybe shifting the paradigm to something that isn't quite so transactional? It's not saying that every single thing has to be run and controlled by the government, but it is, you know, there is sort of a movement in your country to kind of create a bit more of a fair playing field, a bit more balance. And as those decisions were coming to the fore and kind of being made, and of course that was ushered in, and I'm sure it goes beyond this, but the real energy behind it started with President Obama, because he was trying to create this, you know, Obamacare to sort of get people insured so there would be coverage. And as that movement gained strength, or, you know, people became aware of it, that sort of almost instinctive, but this country is transactional energy came to the fore, because what you had was hospitals and nursing homes and, I don't know, x-ray places, the medical, you know, the offshoots for medical care, prescriptions, etc. All of those started to realize that, wait a minute, our own bottom line is going to be impacted. And part of what happened was, instead of them saying our bottom line is going to be impacted, they started saying things like, well, you will lose your doctor. We will have to shut down hospitals. You know, prices are going to skyrocket. So what they did was they created a fear base from which you moved forward. And so you ended up, frankly, with the ultimate in terms of a transactional president. And you ended up with a party, the Republicans, who then became almost like desperate to line their pockets as quickly as they could, you know, sort of get while the getting's good. And that has permeated. It has spread everywhere. I mean, you see that going on with IT companies, you know, Facebook, etc. So they're sort of developed this real sense of we really have to sort of push profits to the max, because it could all stop. If the wrong government gets in, they're going to start dipping into our pockets, and we're not going to like what that looks like or feels like to our bottom line, and frankly, to the shareholders. Because make no mistake, companies are beholden to the shareholders. They are not beholden to the consumers. So if the shareholders are used to making a certain amount of money, it is that corporations, and it is unfortunately an obligation and a responsibility, that they continue to provide that sort of income or revenue or profit to their shareholders. So you have that standard: the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And as your country has sort of started to grapple with which way do we actually want to go, is there a reason why we can't have Medicare like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, Germany, Italy, kind of the rest of the world? That you would draw into, or someone would come into the energy field who was that transactional. Because part of what it did was it pointed out, if you will, the imbalance and the greed. And so if you're going to give Donald Trump credit for anything, what he does deserve credit for is that his corruption and his greed was so in your face, it was so blatant, that it was almost impossible to ignore it. It was almost impossible to carry on as if business as normal. And so from 30,000 feet, that's part of what is going on, just in a really broad sweep, and from a much higher perspective than we're used to dealing on a sort of day-by-day basis. So now the United States is going to grapple with this. That's what they're in the throes of. That's what they're trying to figure out. And what you can see from the people who are running under the Democratic umbrella is there really is a division, right? You have that Medicare for all, free university, let's just give everybody everything. And that is balanced off by we as a country, frankly, don't do really well when we try to make sudden radical changes. It creates so much fear that everything gets stalled and stopped. Look back to Obamacare. So you have that other group who are saying, okay, we need to fix healthcare, and we need to look at prescription prices, and frankly, we even need to look at university and post-secondary education and student loans, but it cannot be done in one fell swoop. And there has to be a balance between we need this, and so you rich people all have to pay, versus kind of more of a middle of the road, so that it's more we need this, and we're looking towards the wealthy to help facilitate that. But in fact, what we're actually looking for is to once again strengthen and build the middle class and bring the lower class up. So that's, again, so the country once again is, even within Democrats and soft Republicans and independents, there is an awareness that this has to happen. But again, you're seeing that exact same energy, that division. And so it's a really good thing that when the whole Democratic race for a presidential nominee started, there was sort of that thing that went around saying it doesn't matter who ends up with the nomination, we will support that person, irregardless of whether they actually, are exactly what we want. We understand that there is so much that needs to be fixed. We need to come out of recession. We need to come out of almost like the country being sick. We need to move forward to something that creates more of a balance. And and so the division or the fighting has sort of even within that Democratic Party kind of intensified, because you have these two very, very different means of getting to the end goal. So from a very high sort of spiritual perspective, that is what is going on. Now, unfortunately, globally, this is hit at exactly the same time that just globally there is a push towards dictatorship. There is a push towards the strong men, people, and there's a logical progression here. People get frustrated with their life because they're not progressing the way they want to. They're not making the advances that they hope to. And so at some point, one of two things happens. Either you sort of start taking things into your own hands and say, well, if I can't count on the government, or I can't count on big corporations to help me find that path forward, well, you know what? I'm going to do it myself. But that has been really almost overbalanced or counterbalanced by the fact that a lot of people just become so discouraged that there is a sense of surrender, and they kind of go, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to listen to somebody who apparently seems to know more than I do. And that has sort of taken grip. And so you have the Putins and the Erdogans and the Xi's and the Kim Jong-uns really, really clamping down on the will of the people. They do not want them to move forward and progress, because that lessens their own power and thereby diminishes their strength. As long as these people can be sort of held captive, it works to their advantage. England, with Boris Johnson, that's another example of kind of that attitude of just, digging in and becoming entrenched in that that sort of attitude. And for those of you who watched my political readings for Canada around the time of the elections, I started to use the phrase, it is either a we or a me. And that's exactly what is going on kind of globally in some senses, right? People are really having to struggle with, but I am needy. I have things that I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to keep a roof over my head. And this and this and this is going to help me, hopefully, maybe achieve it. On the other hand, you have but I'm struggling, except the planet is dying. Industries that we used to depend on, like coal and oil and gas, are shifting to another form of renewable energy. So it's either that we're going to start approaching things from a we perspective, as in we're going to try to take, make it better for sort of everybody, or don't care about that. I'm just going to try to make it better for me. And in that me category are the big corporations, corrupt governments, and people who are just so, their burden is so heavy that they really are just looking to hand that burden off to somebody who they believe could maybe take them out of this. And unfortunately, again, if you are not the shareholder, you are the consumer, and the consumer ends up being left out. So that's kind of what's going on. And I'm not going to get too esoteric, but the other thing that's going on globally is there really is a sort of a fight for light versus dark and good versus evil. And so there is that sense that, this really is a struggle. This is a fight for civilization. This is a fight for mankind. This is a fight for the planet. And the United States has come to that place where they are having to identify exactly what it means to be American. That was figured out 250 whatever years ago. I'm sure there was another reevaluation. I want to say, I don't know my history and my dates very well, but I want to say sort of after that Second World War, when that New Deal came in and there was a real push to build the prosperity of the country and try to level the playing field, if you will. And it appears that once again, there is sort of that cycle of, okay, well, what do we do here? Are we going to do we, or are we going to do me? And that is literally the energetic fight that is going on within your country right now. And so this is the thing, right? This is the thing to keep in mind. People are coming together. Even people who maybe typically you wouldn't have think would join forces, but they are coming together and they are wanting the truth to come out and they are wanting justice to be created. And this is the thing about the truth. You can't deal with it in half measures. Sometimes the only way to look at something objectively and realistically is to dig it out, unearth it, pull it out of the darkness, and bring the whole thing to light so that you can actually look and see what you're dealing with and the best way to move forward. Now, there is going to happen a change of perspective. There is. It's taking its time. It's moving slowly. But frankly, you are a big nation with a lot of people. And so everybody's attitude is just not going to change on a dime. It's just not. I mean, look how long it took for people of the planet to literally decide, oh, maybe smoking isn't good for me. And in some countries, it's still considered very normal and it's not a problem, or it's not seen as a problem the way it is in other places. Look at the evolution of sort of going from a very healthy diet to a very unhealthy diet. And slowly, the move is going back towards, healthy and more holistic foods. It doesn't change on a dime. It is an evolution. But make no mistake, attitudes are changing, and the groups that are coming together are using all of the tools at their disposal to create a working change for the better. And you know who's going to help facilitate that change? It's going to be the young people. It is the people who are in their late teens, their 20s, and their 30s, who frankly grew up and are growing up in a very different time frame and a very different energetic feel than those of us who might be 50 or 60 or better. So they have simply a different way of looking at things, right? They think outside the box, and they're very vested in getting this fixed because those people who are 18, 20, 22, they realize this is their world. This is what they are going to live on. This is their planet. This is all they have to work with to build that forward movement and momentum. And they are going to be instrumental in bringing in that change of a fortune. And what you see right now, it's very clear. What you see right now are those people who are pushing back. people in coal country, big oil, gas, that industry. They are pushing back because they are scared of being left out literally in the cold and pushed to the side. But the energy moving forward will embrace more, but it is down, frankly, a new path because this one has not served you well. It did for several generations. I mean, 1920, 30, 40, 50, there was growth, there was prosperity, even into the 60s and 70s, 80s. And I'm not saying that everything was peachy keen, because frankly, it's never peachy keen anywhere in any country. But there was that sense, it's kind of like the bubble burst, right? And now there's this struggle. Some people are trying to regain what they had by going backwards. And some people, the younger people, and a lot of the enlightened people moving forward. And frankly, on this channel, I have many, many enlightened people. Not only do I have amazing divine feminine energy, but I have amazing enlightened male viewers. That is going to be the direction that you're going. And it's not going to be as scary as you think. It's not going to be as hard as you think. But it is going to take change. And it is going to take a rebalancing of the way things are looked at. And a rebalancing of assets. And frankly, almost a new priority on what is an asset. Because in our world now, we tend to think of our assets as possessions, money, cars, homes, vacations, what we can afford as how we sort of judge and view our assets. In the days and years and decades to come, assets are going to become things like fresh water, clean water, fresh air to breathe, healthy produce that isn't so drenched in chemicals that we have health concerns as a result spiraling out of control. Those are going to become the more important assets, because the souls that are coming to the earth and have started to arrive on the earth, again, that teens, 20s, 30s, they have a very different perspective and idea about what creates an asset. And so what you are right now is in growing pains. And who better to point out how unbalanced and insane and crazy that unbalance was than a Donald Trump, than a Mitch McConnell, than those people who are so greedy, the big corporations who are so greedy that there is no concern. That's going to change, but it's going to take time, it's going to take work, and it's going to take effort. And frankly, you're up for it. It can be done, and it will be done. And it's not only going to be done in the United States. It ripples. It's going to be done in other countries around the world. Those young people are going to become a force to be reckoned with. And perhaps this Thanksgiving, we can all just take a moment to be very grateful that the mantle that we are handing off are to a generation that has very clear vision at this time. So, I get that this is not kind of a typical reading coming out of Soulprint Intuitive Tarot, but I thought it was necessary today, maybe of all days, to just take a look and just see why. And now we know why. And in fact, more importantly, we now know the road going forward. All right. So thank you, as always, for the views, the subscriptions, the likes, the comments. They are amazing, and I'm very grateful to them. I wish everybody in the United States a blessed and happy Thanksgiving. And I wish all my other viewers from all the other places that join me also a day of gratitude. Just take a moment to be grateful for the blessings. We all have some, and we all can spend a moment or two just acknowledging them. Okay, so take care, be well, and I'll see you really soon. Bye.